Okay, we're now recording.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this TESOL-IATEFL online discussion about how ESP projects can create positive social change. I'm Kevin Knight, the moderator of the discussion, and as you can see on the screen, I'm affiliated with TESOL, and I'm based in Japan at Kanda University of International Studies. I'd like to share with you a conversation that I had with a man last Sunday, as I think it's relevant to our discussion today. And the man was a Chinese. He had been living in Cambodia, and he'd come to the United States with his family when he was 22 years old, and he did not know any English when he arrived. So he went from ABC, learning the ABCs, to passing the GED, and he entered university when he was 24 years old. He then obtained a PhD, and he has an international position based in the United States, and he travels outside of the country on business. His children have entered top universities and graduate schools in the United States. And when I asked him for the reason for his success, he said self-worth. And in addition, he explained that he had learned to make the best of any circumstances. He learned as much as he could. He worked harder than others so that he would be selected for promotion. And in connection with the Chinese cultural influence, he said that it was expected that children do better than their parents. And I considered his story to be an example of social change, from an immigrant with no English language ability to a highly educated and successful global professional. And he's passed on this success to the next generation. And this story, I think, leads us to our discussion topic today as we address the question, how can ESP projects create positive social change? And in responding to this question, we'll be focusing on the following scenario. You're all members of a task force team to provide language training for employees of a multinational corporation. The HR department of the company is interested in your ideas about providing not only in-house training, but also involving local universities in the training of its employees. And in addition, the HR department is wondering how such training could be connected to its annual report on corporate social responsibility. So share your ideas in connection with the big picture, how ESP projects can create positive social change. And there will be three parts to the discussion. First, the participants will comment on the scenario. Second, the participants will respond to specific questions in connection with the scenario. And third, the participants will provide their final comments. So I'm looking forward to a great discussion. And Andy, would you like to get us started?
Hi, yes. I'm Andy Gillett from IATEFL at sensible time, lunchtime in England. The topic that we're dealing with is how ESP projects can create positive social change. And I think one way to create positive social change is for people to develop what the French philosopher Pierre Bourdieu calls cultural capital. Cultural capital, as far as I can see, is the ideas and knowledge that people draw upon as they take part in social life. Everything from the social rules to being able to speak and write effectively. Some of it's developed through upbringing, but mostly, I would say, developed through education. One aspect of this cultural capital is what Bourdieu calls linguistic capital, which is the mastery of relation to language, accent, dialect, style, register, genres, etc. And in order to succeed in the education system and therefore develop socially is to succeed linguistically. ESP, as far as I can see, is about developing students' use of language in different contexts, either occupational or academic contexts, and this is developing, I think, linguistic capital. So I think this is very broadly where ESP fits in.
Great. Thank you very much there, Andy. And Anne, would you like to continue?
Yes, this is Anne Long Paris of Language Training Designs, my own company, based in Washington, D.C. in the United States, and I'm an EOP specialist representing TESOL. I specialize in the big picture in language planning and language policy for the labor force. The point of language planning and policy is to lead to positive social change because of desired language capability in the labor force. So in terms of our scenario of a multinational corporation seeking to provide language training, the outcome of capability becomes an asset to the individual in greater work engagement and an increased earnings potential. It can make the company more competitive in the global marketplace. It can enhance economic development of the country overall, especially when English training serves corporate goals that are aligned with positive national economic policy. These positive policies can include nationalization of the labor force, equal treatment of third country nationals, youth employment, women's entrepreneurship, especially of the disenfranchised, integration of rebel group members into the local economy post-conflict, and planned change from illicit to legal goods or services.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Anne. And let's see, Asen and Charles are unable to be with us, so Jackie, are you ready?
I'm ready. Thank you, Kevin.
Just a moment. If we have time, I'd like to add one quote from Barry Chiswick. Would that be acceptable?
Oh, please do.
Yeah, this is from Barry Chiswick's Human Capital Development Working Paper 70 for the World Bank. The title is The Economics of Language, the Roles of Education and Labor Market Outcomes. Barry writes, language skills, including fluency and literacy, may also play a central role in the human capital that individuals bring to training opportunities in schooling and on-the-job training and to the labor market. This affects not only the employment and earnings opportunities of the individual, but also the aggregate human capital available to the economy. As a result of the latter, it affects the rate of economic growth and change of the economy. And I would add social change of the economy.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Anne. And okay, so Jackie, you're on.
Hey, hi, everybody. My name is Jackie Gishbacher. I work at Ohio State University and currently am the chair of TESOL's ESP intersection, following in the footsteps of many of the panelists today. And I'm really here today more as in a learning role than sharing much of my experience. But as far as the topic for today, in my personal experience, I've noticed that when the employer is really interested in improving the quality of life of the employees and not just improving their bottom line, that's when the real magic starts to happen and they really start to see results. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what everybody else has to say in response to all of these questions, to see how we can help our employers and our clients work together to reach those goals.
Great. Thank you very much, Jackie. And Kristen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kristen Ekins. I am the immediate past chair for TESOL's English for Specific Purposes intersection, and I started my career teaching English in manufacturing, in retail, in healthcare, a number of different industries, and I owned my own business doing that as an external consultant. Now I am in this dual perspective role that I am currently a manager in HR for inclusion and diversity for a healthcare system of about 24,000 people based in the US. And so this dual perspective, it's quite interesting with this topic because I feel like both want positive social change, but may look at it from a very different angle. And sometimes it's conflicting for me in that when looking at from the employee perspective, one, we may have limited resources. We want to connect with others in the community. We have challenging schedules to work on. We do want business impact. We also want what's best for the employee. So taking a look at it, but I think all of these pieces can create positive social change.
Great. Okay, and let's see, Prithvi cannot be with us as well, so Margaret, would you mind speaking at this time?
All right. I'm Margaret Van Arsen at Immaculata University Graduate School in snowy Pennsylvania today. I'm a past chair of the ESP intersection at TESOL. Several questions when identifying possible university training partner. we could consider or ask these questions. Does the university's mission statement include a commitment to social responsibility and community collaborations? And this is in line with the theme, overall theme of this panel. Also, would this university give the same status to university faculty involved in workplace training as it would for regular academic courses? Again, another social value issue. Is there already a structure for delivering specialized training outside regular university courses and the academic calendar? And is there an English language training center with expertise for supporting specialized content area training beyond English for general purposes? Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Rana.
Good morning. This is Rana Timpa, and I'm also affiliated with TESOL, and I own a company called Workplace ESL Solutions. And I am really, really excited about this task force because at the end of the day, it's our social responsibility to help these employees find their skill set, from their native country. They came here with a skill set, and I think it's our responsibility to help them reach their goals and give them opportunities to grow in their careers and give them better speaking skills and listening skills so that they can reach their goals. Again, it's our social responsibility, in my opinion, to help employers and the employees gain these skills to improve themselves in the workforce. And when employees are given those skills to move up in the workplace, they feel valued and important, and they are more motivated and productive. And that, at the end of the day, improves bottom line, and that's what the HR department is concerned about. More so than anything else, they need to report their bottom line, return on investment.
Great, thank you very much for that. And to all of you, and this leads us to the questions that we can see on the screen now. And as we can all see here, there will be different individuals responding to these. Again, Margaret is really going to be filling in for Prithvi and Asen, and other speakers will be joining as well. So let me set the timer here for a total of 4 minutes for this next question. And this question is going to be, how would you determine the needs for training? Okay, so we have Margaret, Kristen, and Anne responding to this. So here we go.
I am not prepared on that one. I'm sorry, I didn't.
Okay, Anne?
Okay, that's fine. Thank you, Margaret, for jumping in all the same at the last minute. We really appreciate it. In terms of the needs for training, our first question, I would like to focus on the first stage of needs assessment. In the best practices context, this is organizational needs assessment, or ONA, which is carried out at the management level before instructional needs assessment, INA, which is carried out at the level of target learners. ONA gathers data about needs at the overall corporate level, and it helps with program design. INA gathers data about the needs of individuals at the level of actual job performance and helps with curriculum design. In ONA, we ask structured questions that also educate the company about EOP with the aim of achieving buy-in. We ask questions about company goals, company locations, departments involved, positions involved, number of trainees by location, department, and position, courses desired, number of instructors, perceived instructor qualifications, because if they are wrong, we need to deal with that, mode of delivery of training, time factors, attendance policy, corporate company workspace, testing and evaluation. We also ask about any previous experience with English programs. This usually leads to explaining the rationale for EOP. We review all these data and use them to make decisions about a sound program design.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Anne. And let's see, Kristen, you have about 2 minutes here.
Excellent. So as a member of the task force, I would really start off by saying, is training really the answer? And I use Kathy Moore's model in looking at action mapping process. And so when someone says we need training, sometimes it is obvious. Other times they may be saying that, but not understanding what the root cause actually is. So my first step would be to identify a measurable business goal. What really is it that they want to achieve? Because the first thing that if we were to go in, create an entire program that we feel is excellent, but it doesn't hit that business goal, that business need that they have, then we won't be successful in the end. So looking at it, identify that measurable business goal, then identify what people do to reach that goal. Then for each behavior, identify why people aren't doing it. So if it's about maybe there's environmental factors that are playing into this. Maybe it's knowledge, more skills. Maybe it is from the basics of learning English, but maybe it's more advanced piece in their cultural aspects. What skills do they need to be able to do better on their job? And what's motivating them to be able to improve? And this goes vice versa for the employers, the managers, the supervisors as well, to help the individual, the learner, to really be successful. So I'll just mention a few of the questions I might ask. First of all, I'd be finding out in my needs analysis the audience. Who is it? What can you tell me about this audience? The age, education, the time with the organization, and how they feel about this, both the managers, the supervisors. Have they had training on this in the past? The individuals we're looking at, or related topic. How open are they to training? We may look at the needs then, the business goal. I may ask about, from your perspective, why is training needed now? What do you hope to achieve through this training? For behaviors, what are the employees' current behaviors? What are the desired behaviors? Why do they need to change? And then looking at even some of the scenarios, what roles and responsibilities do the participants have in the organization? What instruments, materials, equipment do the employees use? So there's a number of questions you can ask, but again, coming back to the action mapping process, number one, identify the business goal. Number two, identify what people need to do, and that's do, not know, but what do they need to do to reach that goal? Three, design these activities then that help people practice each behavior. And then the fourth is identify the minimum information needed so that they complete each activity.
Okay, thank you both for this. And let's go on into our second question. What questions would you want to ask the HR contact? And responding to this are Rana and Jackie. So if you could start, that would be great.
Sure. This is Rana Timpa, again, Workplace ESL Solutions. And the questions that I would ask the HR contact, at least some of them, would be, number one, what prompted this conversation? What prompted the need for language training? Why are we even having this conversation? Number two, do you have a succession plan in place, for employees? What's the natural succession from where they are now and where they can go? Number three, are supervisors and executives on board? For executives, you need their buy-in. If you don't have their buy-in, then you're in trouble. And supervisors, we need their reinforcement and support and motivation and to be ambassadors of whatever program we develop. Number four, do you have a relationship already with your local university and or colleges? If so, okay, but do they have a workforce training component? And you need to have conversation with them about what that means and how they can support you. Jackie?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Rana. I really liked what Rana had said about getting the buy-in of the supervisors and the executives in the program, and I want to break that down a little bit more, and I would really focus on finding out what their commitment to the success of this training is going to be. In other words, are they going to offer some time release for their employees to do the training program? Are they going to offer some incentives? Is it going to be part of their performance review? Will they provide the space and the equipment that's necessary for making the training a success? I think a lot of the times their mindset is they have a problem, they need to fix the problem, they're going to hire somebody else to fix the problem. So they really need to have that view of commitment to making their employees successful in order for the training program to be successful. And then in addition, I would want to ask them how they're going to gauge the success of the program. So what do they see is going to be the measuring stick? Is it going to be a standardized test? And if the employees pass the standardized test, that means that they've successfully met their goals. Or do they need to see some more tangible results in the workplace where the communication issues have been resolved? So I think that's an important conversation to have with them to make sure that their measuring stick is actually measuring the goal that they've established, like Kristen had spoken about earlier. And then finally, this is less of a question, but when working with the HR professionals, making sure that we're managing the expectations of this training program. If it's for a really large corporation, we might need to talk about starting on a smaller scale and working out any kinks within the program before moving to a larger training program involving all of the employees. So just managing those expectations to starting small and moving big. That's really all I have. So 30 seconds left if anybody else wants to pop in on this issue.
Okay. Anyone else want to add anything at this time? All right. Well, thank you guys both for those responses. That was a lot of information and very interesting. And we're going to try to have a little bit of more time toward the end so we can all ask questions and make some more comments. So let's go on to our next question. What would the options for EOP training be? Since Charles not with us today, Kristen is able to address this on her own. If we have more time, please feel free to join Kristen after she's finished. And please begin.
All right. Hi, this is Kristen Ekins again with C3 Consulting. And I would say that exactly what Jackie was talking about and figuring out, first of all, if we've asked the questions, to figure out the timing, what space is available and allocated, what the scope is of this project, and if we're talking about multinational, then we're looking at from what are our options for virtual, for face-to-face. Is there a budget for being willing to fly people to face-to-face sites? Could it be done regionally across the globe? All of those different factors. So if you've asked the right questions in the needs assessment to figure out what are the options available, then you can start to figure out what are some of the things that we can provide, what types of training can we provide. And I go back to, again, the scope piece is huge. I would recommend piloting any of these options first on a smaller scale to see how this company, the culture of this company, reacts to them. So a few of the things that we could recommend based on the needs might be the classroom training. It could be very formal, held on site. It could be funded by the employer fully or maybe just partially. Some organizations say, it's outside of working hours, but I often recommend that we do either split on working hours and off working hours or both together so that the employees can be the most engaged as possible. E-learning, always having some kind of digital media available, completing courses online, and you could have that be self-paced, or it could be that you have a trainer that's online with them. And I would say multinational, we would want different components of both of these. On-the-job training is another piece, and I want to mention this because I feel this one and the next one, mentoring, have a lot to do with social change, and those have a very large impact on if we're getting other employees involved within the company to help provide language training, but at the same time look at reverse mentoring. So there's culture share that's happening in this. That produces a culture within the area of dialogue. So opening it up for people to talk about things that maybe would feel awkward to talk about otherwise, but when you start building those relationships with others around because you're mentoring each other, that's a great way for people to start connecting. And I think that's a major piece of the social change, is how do we connect with others and build those relationships. So on-the-job training, mentoring, and the last one I'll mention is that self-study. And I think showing the motivation and all of that individuals being able to self-study and have formal activities as well as informal activities that they can work on their own, but having access to the right materials, to job aids, to reports, articles, whatever they might need to really understand what they need to do better. That's it from me.
Great. Does anyone want to jump in?
I just want to reinforce what Kristen had said about the social aspect of learning. I really like what she said, that learning a language can't be in isolation, so that key factor of getting the other employees to jump in and help out with the language training is so valuable. So I just wanted to reinforce that even when we're building like an online program or self-paced program, that we still have to be very mindful of getting that social aspect in the program.
Great. Okay, thank you very much for that, Jackie. And let's see, let's go on then to our next question. This is, what would the options for EAP training be? And Margaret, are you able to answer this one?
I'll give it a try.
All right.
Okay, first of all, I want to make sure it's assumed that the university training component would be closely coordinated with other training provided in the project, and that it not be sort of separate off by itself. I'm also going to assume that it would be that the English for Academic component is going to be based on ESP, a principle of being based on a real need. Therefore, it's going to be assumed that in this particular project that some or all of the specialized content provided by the university would be taught in English. Certainly it would be nice if some of the content can be taught in the learner's first language, but at this point we're looking at an EAP component. So several considerations would include, is the specialized instructor open to collaboration with an English communication support specialist? Next, this English support specialist would need to recognize that he or she is only providing support on communications and is not trying to interpret the specialized content. Now, looking at issues regarding pay, I think, and this shapes the type of option that's provided. Paid time would be provided for both instructors to collaborate outside the training session and for participating in appropriate planning in the larger project to make sure this EAP component just doesn't sit off by itself. Also, there'd be paid time for observing the content training by, there'd also be a paid time for the English support specialist to observe the content training in order to provide ongoing feedback on the observed needs of the trainees. They would be sitting in on and seeing how the trainees were interacting, and that seemed to be understanding what was going on. If a non-native English-speaking faculty member is providing the content area training in English, and if that faculty member is not entirely comfortable through training through English, these two instructors might discuss the type of additional English communication support that the content specialist might benefit from. Now, I'd like to also sort of slip back into the university resource or characteristic. If the department that is providing this training or that has a specialization I guess not if, but does it have a specialization or an interest in workplace and professional communications? If so, then faculty members from that department could also become involved in some interesting interesting collaborations. I'd also like to look at refer back to what Kristen has said in several places. I feel like the recognition and incentive issues. Would the human relations, would the corporate human relations recognize that university-based training on the trainees that this being offered will be applied toward upward mobility training, and not just, oh, that was an interesting academic training over here, but it isn't really tied with the larger project. I think it's very important that university-based be credited with upward mobility. And also, I think Kristen has mentioned looking at youth resources for information technology, so we would want to look at the university's resources in this capacity.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And let's see, let's go on then to our next question. And this is, how would you want to assess training performance? And Kristen, we have Kristen scheduled here as a speaker. Margaret, are you also prepared to comment on this next question?
I have about 1 minute for this.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so I'll leave it to both of you.
Go ahead, Kristen, first.
Oh, okay. So I wrote my master's thesis on this topic, so of course I could go on much longer than 2 minutes, but I'll leave it very succinct in that what I would look at is using Kirkpatrick's 4 levels of evaluation, and actually there is a 5th level, and I believe Anne Lemperis will be talking about that shortly as well. But the first level is reaction, and we typically, this is used in most trainings, it's quote-unquote the happy sheets. It's when we're trying to focus on participants' reaction to or satisfaction with the program or the training. So really, we're trying to get at, in all of this, qualitative and quantitative information that we can present then to human resources. The reaction sheets provide us with some of that qualitative, because you asked for comments. What did you like about this training? What did you value most? All of those type of things. But that's only getting at the surface. So the next level would be level 2, learning. And how do we get at the learning? How do we show that we're measuring gains? This can be through standardized assessments if those are available. They're difficult to come by, though, I would say, in English for occupational purposes. There are a few out there, certainly. It depends on if they're in business English or if they're at a lower literacy level and trying to figure out, improve there. You can use different tests that have been created by you or by the team. We could use skill practices, simulations, group evaluations, different role plays, those type of assessment tools for the level 2 learning. For the level 3 learning, that's behavior. And this is where it's very challenging, and as we go up the scale here, the level 1, 2, 3, and 4, it gets more challenging to get this information. Behavior focuses on the-job behavior. And you need to find this out from the supervisors and managers. So this is where we have to have a very strong relationship with others in the organization and figuring out, are the participants applying what they've learned and transferring it to the workplace. And then the 4th level is about the results. And this is measurements focused on actual impact on the business. And have participants successfully been applying this program material? Can others see it? And this typically measures the output, the quality, the time, the cost that's put into the program, and the customer satisfaction. And the 5th one, just very briefly, would be measuring that return on investment. And again, I won't go into this because I believe Anne will in an upcoming question, but this is critical for being asked to come back and be able to do this work again in this company if that's what's needed. Margaret?
Okay. I'm taking a slightly different angle on this, which is good. We didn't have a, okay. I think it's very important that whoever is involved in designing an EAP training program will also be part of the overall needs assessment team. And next, I think that in a university-based component, there would be two strands of objectives in designing, and and these objectives would then be tied in to, would also become a part of the assessment. And these objectives would be assessing the content training, and another strand for assessing the development of English communication skills. And these initial objectives would probably change over time as the content training continued, because the trainees might become more accustomed to learning through English, and so you're not going to have a fixed here is our set of objectives right at the beginning, and then at the end this other, when things may have changed in the meantime. The assessment would be criterion based, and the content specialist and the English support specialist would collaborate on establishing the criteria for assessment of communication needs, as the content specialist may have some other views of what's effective communication in their particular field. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And let's go on to our next question here. How would you price the training? And again, Kristen and Anne. Anne, please begin.
Thank you. This is Anne Lamperis. This may seem like we're working backward, but ideally we would like to price an EOP training program according to the value we add to the company from the program. This value add is really the return on investment, or ROI, that we produce for the company. To come up with an ROI figure, we must carry out a cost-benefit analysis, or CBA. Let me give you a quick hypothetical example from our corporation. Engineer XYZ from country ABC knows his subject very well, but he has difficulty writing a technical report in English. It should take him 2 hours, but it takes him 10 because of his limited English. He is wasting the company 8 hours of time. The engineer's supervisor should take half an hour to review his report. Instead, it takes him 5 hours to correct and rewrite it. He is wasting 4.5 hours of company time. We get a figure for this wasted time by converting their salaries into hourly rates. If we introduce a technical writing course and run it for 2 10-week cycles, we bring time down by half for both the engineer and the supervisor. Say this savings is $4,420. We charge $700 per person for the 2 10-week cycles. So we subtract $700 from the $4,420 to get the net savings to the company of $37.20. This is the cost benefit, and the ROI is 531%. Do you think we should be charging more than $700 per person for our English program? The challenge, of course, is to come up with some sense of these figures in advance, so we know what to charge when we have to price the program at the beginning. We as a field need to develop lots and lots of such CBA ROI data per industry sector, so that we can draw upon these data to develop pricing for any given industry sector client we may need to write a proposal for. The article that Bill Martin and I wrote on this topic for TESOL Quarterly might be useful. In fact, we wrote it as a teacher training resource. But absent these data today, we must take into consideration all of our costs to provide the program, including recovery of marketing and administrative time before the contract kicks in. And we need to build in a profit margin. I've also found it wise to segment my pricing. I set one price for doing the needs assessment. Only after I've gathered all this information can I accurately plan implementation. So then I develop another price for implementation.
Okay, and
Thank
Kristen.
you. Yeah, thank you, Anne. Kristen Ekins, C3 Consulting. And I just wanted to piggyback off of what you were saying about the value add. What's our value proposition? And I have read your article, The Return on Investment, and it is fantastic, so I highly recommend that for others. Looking at just a few of the questions, I'm going to put my sales hat on now, and And I come from sales background, and so part of it is looking at, okay, is there actually a budget allocated for this project? And we're trying to get at, do they have money? Are they really willing to put in enough money for what this is worth? This takes us so much time to put together, so let's qualify if there actually is room for a project in their budget, and if their budget changes, that it won't go away tomorrow. So I ask questions like, is there a budget allocated for this project? What is your timing to accomplish this? So I know, determining what those needs are immediately and setting expectations from the very beginning. Finding then the economic buyer. So I'm asking, who will be seen as the major sponsor and or champion? Because you want to know who is going to champion this in the long run. Is it the HR manager that you're working with? Is it the director of inclusion and diversity? Who might it be? Is it the director of training in this company? So who's going to continue to sponsor them? And then I become very good friends with that person. The objectives, trying to figure out from their own words, not what I think the objectives are, but what is the ideal outcome you'd like to experience? And this piggybacks on what Ann was saying as well. You're trying to figure out what are those top priorities to be accomplished. The measure of success, how will the environment or culture be improved? When we're talking about social change, we want to ask them how they feel the environment or culture will be improved, and they're giving us the answer then, so that we're not telling them what the value proposition is, but they're telling us. And then, what is the value or impact to the organization? What would be the impact or result if you did nothing at all? And those get at some of the things that Ann was mentioning as well. And what is this currently costing you annually? And what might you save or what might you gain? And then the last thing I'll mention is segmented pricing, like Ann said too. After I found out some of those things, I'd figure out, so here's what it's going to cost for program consultation, and this will change for however large of scope this project is. This is what it will cost for a needs assessment. If there's classroom space that I have to rent, this is what it will cost. The pilot project, if I pilot, this is what it will cost to pilot it. If there's a single session program, this is the cost for that. Or if there's multi-session programs, then I might give a discount for that type of thing.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Kristen. And let's go on to our next question then. What obstacles would you expect, and how would you prepare to overcome those obstacles? Anne, it looks like you're going to be the person answering this question.
Great, great.
I was filling in also for Aysen. Can I do that?
Oh, I'm sorry, Margaret. Are you prepared for Aysen's role on this as well?
Just yes, but after Ann's.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for pointing that out. Here we go.
Well, I would be going first, Margaret.
Okay, all right. I would just want to say I'm not going to be looking at a specific obstacle, but perhaps a mindset university faculty members participating in this project might bring. Sometimes they will have a subconscious bias against the workplace context. It's too applied, not academic enough. But I think by involving the content specialist in the overall project might be one way of developing and might ignite an understanding of how their contribution in the EAP program component can impact the social and economic change. Thank you.
Great point, Margaret, great point. From the EOP context, I've encountered the following typical obstacles when trying to set up a program or when dealing with management. One, I'm going to list all my obstacles first and then some basic principles for how to address them. First, management doesn't believe in EOP. They are only comfortable with general English, which is the only thing they're familiar with, if they're familiar with anything about language training. They want to buy an already published textbook. They don't want to have to develop a curriculum from scratch. Two, management wants to accomplish too many goals in one program, or the one goal they do have for the program is too unrealistic and ambitious. Three, management does not allow enough time for the program. Four, management does not allow enough budget. Five, there is a lack of trained EOP teachers available worldwide. Six, the program design is inappropriate. 7, you're expected to produce the same results in the same time even though some of your learners' incoming proficiency is very low, while others is intermediate or advanced. 8. The mode of delivery isn't going to work for the required learning. For example, an online mode doesn't work when you have to be hands-on with equipment for safety actions. 9. Employees are supposed to take the program on personal time, not on company time, and this is not realistic given employees' other commitments. 10. The company insists on using internationally recognized standardized tests that have nothing to do with the customized training you have been providing. So, to overcome these obstacles, you must essentially educate the client about why EOP works for corporate goals and why other approaches won't produce the desired results. You have to break down each obstacle and explain why it won't produce desired results. For example, a commercial text won't teach the specific job communication that needs to be improved. It won't teach the specific safety precautions or hazards to avoid on your company floor. With a general English textbook, the company will waste a lot of time on irrelevant lessons about broccoli in the food chain and never get to the topics relevant to its operations. So it is a total waste of time for your goals not to have customized curriculum. 2, in a related vein, standardized tests will tell the company nothing about improved English for their own targeted job performance. You only get valid and reliable results if you test what you have been teaching. Regarding budget, and this is a huge issue, provide basic education about what an EOP program costs. Do not pare it down to what the company can offer, if that is truly unworkable. If you reduce budget, also reduce service. Don't reduce your basic costs while providing the same services, or you will end up working for free. With all these obstacles, know where you can compromise, if you can, and what is non-negotiable. Be prepared to walk if you know you can't produce the results under any of the imposed conditions.
Okay, and thank you very much for that, Anne. And let's move on then to our final question. What would you tell the HR contact in connection with the question about the company's CSR report? And we have Kristen and Anne responding to this.
Thanks, Kevin. This is Kristen Ekins. So in looking at this, I would say that there's a social impact as well as the economic impact. And I tried to find out more about what they typically put in their social corporate responsibility report. And for example, the healthcare organization I work in right now, we might talk about healthier communities and how we connect to the communities, as that's part of our mission. But we could talk about in a multinational company looking at, okay, what research are we impacting? What education are we providing? And again, community engagement, I think, is huge just in looking at positive social change and saying, how are the employees, both the non-native speakers of English and the native speakers of English, engaging more with the community outside? And that can be defined however the company chooses to define it. Is it the very local community, or is it the regional community, the community of the organization? We could also see if they would want to put this into, if they have an inclusion and diversity, global inclusion and diversity section, and talk about what the impact this is having on how people are connecting with each other. But I think a huge piece where it can be a big miss if we don't talk about, if they have a section on innovation and how, and employee engagement, and how these two things, when we have workplace English, how that is impacting innovation, that if used in the right way, it could be action teams, that these teams or these participants in the program can be used as sounding boards, and they can help innovate in ways that maybe others wouldn't have thought of in the past. So in the report, we could report out on some of the great success stories and case studies, things that how people's lives are changing within the organization and how it's impacting the community outside the organization. Anne?
Wonderful points, Kristen. Thank you. For EOP, after years of research, I have developed a framework of 4 basic contexts or domains into which all communicative needs fall. And I keep adding to these, so it's certainly not ever finished. But these 4 contexts are administration, operations, social responsibility, and human resources. Under social responsibility, it generally includes compliance with international or multilateral standards, agreements, regulatory requirements about things like health, safety, and security, environmental protection both inside and outside the workplace, workers' rights and working conditions, human rights and equity related to such things as gender and religious beliefs and practices. But in the bigger picture, social corporate responsibility involves how the company is truly contributing at all 6 levels of society I mentioned at the outset. And let me just run through a few examples. Level 1, international multilateral. Our corporation may have to maintain ISO certification under this UN standards body. Its business interactions may be constrained by international sanctions, which it hopefully ethically complies with. Or it may have to comply with regional or world trade agreements and international environmental accords. It must stay informed about its industry sector commodities and services as they are affected by the rise and fall of international stock markets. 2, at the national government ministry level. Hopefully our hypothetical corporation supports positive national economic development policies. I've mentioned these before, nationalization of the labor force while also advocating for equal treatment of third country nationals, which is a huge, huge issue. Youth employment, disenfranchised women's entrepreneurship, integration of rebel group members into the local economy post-conflict, and planned change from illicit to legal goods and services. At the industry sector level, as one company within its industry sector, it contributes to the overall advancement of this sector as a member of industry professional associations and other bodies engaged in professional development, advocacy, compliance, and training. At the corporate level, it participates in the community through positive status in the Better Business Bureau, in the Chamber of Commerce, and similar organizations. Internally, it supports its employees through progressive benefits packages, high safety and health standards, and training and leadership programs, to name a few. At the education training level of society, the corporation maintains education and training qualifications for hiring employees. It makes use of these institutions for further employee development as needed. At the language training level, when it needs language training, such as English language training, it selects a qualified provider, particularly one that uses an EOP approach rather than a general English approach. And it's really up to us in the field to make sure that they become educated about the value of an EOP approach as opposed to other approaches.
Great. Thank you very much, Ann. And my apology on that bell sounding there. It was fine. Everything is fine. In our point number 4 here on the screen, we're now going to be given the opportunity to give final comments on the discussion theme. So let's see if we can start off with Andy. You can use this time to give comments about what you've heard so far or to ask questions, and but we'll have 1 minute approximately for each person, and we can comment about what other people are saying as well. So Andy, if you could start us off.
Thank you, Kevin. When you first suggested this topic, I found it very difficult to relate the questions to the overall topic. I think I could do better now. It's been a very interesting hour. I was particularly interested in something Margaret said about integration. I'm mainly teaching EAP now in a business school, and I'm falling out gradually with the term EAP because it's getting very generic in the UK. Probably influenced by big publishers who want to sell millions and millions of generic EAP textbooks. And Margaret said something about we should be thinking in terms of ESP rather than EAP, and I agree with that entirely. The problem is that the publishers then are publishing ESAP textbooks which again, just as generic. Margaret also mentioned collaboration, and I think that's important. Some of the best teaching experiences of my life have been recently teaching in a classroom at the same time with an accounting lecturer. And we worked together on different aspects of accounting. And it made me realize how much of teaching accounting is teaching the language, the linguistic aspects of accounting. Again, and this is not just to the international students, this is to home students as well. So it does seem, going back to something Kristen said about responsibility, that developing the linguistic aspect of cultural capital is everybody's responsibility, not just the ESP, EAP teachers. I had a bit of a disagreement with Stephen Krashen recently online when he said in a couple of places, one of them in Japan at Temple University, I think, that EAP was a waste of time. And I think he agreed that once I defined EAP in the way I wanted to do, that I think he agreed that it wasn't a waste of time. But it's been a very interesting hour. Thank you.
Great, well done. Okay, thank you. And let's see, Anne?
I would just reiterate the importance of reaching the high-level decision makers within corporate management up front about the basic concepts of EOP: needs assessment, customization, collaboration. I just seem to be repeating those and singing that song over and over and over again, and that, as they understand those concepts, that really helps to sell EOP. So I think those three concepts are ones that we really need to take to heart when we are trying to educate high-level decision makers about EOP. I think we must make sure that...
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry. Please continue. Right.
Okay. I think we need to make sure that we get corporate buy-in, not just from the upper management, from all levels in the organization. And another point I would make, that I would stress, is that a sound and sustainable program design must be put in place first so that we can deliver a good curriculum through it. Finally, I would say that we really need to address, as a field, the issue that there is a worldwide lack of EOP teachers. Typically, EOP teacher training takes place on the job. We build the plane while we're flying it. This is unacceptable. We need to develop programs that train EOP teachers in advance, and these programs need to be done with a corporate partner who is interested in the EOP program itself and agrees to be used as a site for the teacher training, such as for learning how to conduct needs assessments. In my experience, when this happens, those same teachers are the first to be hired by the company who wanted the program in the first place. At the same time, and I think this is a very important point, we need to have training programs, or at least call them orientation seminars, for corporate clients. One idea I've had is to set up the best practices as requirements in a proposal or in an RFP format and give corporate clients a seminar on each of the best practices and have them write to the points we set up for a successful best practice in their RFP. By the end, they will have a well-designed quality program for EOP.
Okay, thank you very much, Anne. And Jackie?
Okay, I want to start by saying here, Anne. I agree with the points you were just making about training for EOP professionals and EAP professionals. So I was furiously taking notes when I was listening to all of the other speakers, and because there's just so much I'm still learning, like Anne gave the metaphor of building the plane while we're flying it. I often feel like I'm in that situation. So I hope that that we can continue these discussions and really take each one of these questions that we've addressed and turn them into their own hour-long conversation for the benefit of people who are trying to do just that while they're building the plane while they're flying it. So thank you, Kevin, for arranging this, start scratching the surface, and thank you to all the panelists for really lending your expertise in each of the areas. I've learned so much, and I look forward to learning more.
Okay, and I'll say here to that. And let's see, Kristen?
Yes, thank you. It has been an exciting hour. I've learned a lot as well. I want to focus my last comments on a positive organization and creating a positive organization. I recently read a book by Robert Quinn, Quinn, and it's called The Positive Organization, and it's talking about breaking free from conventional cultures, constraints, and beliefs. And why I want to focus on this is going back to what others have said, but each person has ownership within the company to help others feel included and involved in and connected. And so each person also has the potential to initiate, influence, and lead. And I would say from our language learners' perspective, they're trying to express their authentic voice. They're trying to see and seize new opportunities. Building those social networks are incredibly important. Having high quality connections so that they can move up in the organization. Embracing feedback, so being able to understand what that feedback is, and exceeding expectations of their employer. So just for anyone to be able to learn and flourish within an organization, it has to have that social connection and that piece to be able to make people successful in the work that they're doing. So Positive Organizations, I highly recommend that book.
Okay, thank you very much. And Margaret.
Yeah, I'd like to just go back to what Andy was saying, just to look at the issue of English for academic purposes. It has always bothered me as to whether we're talking academic in academic contexts or what it meant, and I think it has become confused. And Anne and I have looked at a diagram in which we're looking at ESP with two prongs, I guess. One would be if you're serving learners who are in the process of learning a content area and becoming a specialist in their area, and some of that training is in English, then we are going to be supporting that kind of training. And then that becomes English for academic purposes with a specific need, and not a general academic context. And the other component would be if you're training people who have already gone out and become specialists in their areas and they want to have additional language communication skills, English communication skills. So we're looking, and it may be of an academic, they may be in an academic specialization, law, business, whatever. But we're looking at people who are, who are in the process of becoming specialists in language support for them while they're being trained, and the others while they're already out, and if we're providing additional training. So that would need to be considered in such a project where we determine how it's being seen in the project, what the relationship is, who the target population is. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Margaret. And Rana.
Last but not least, Rana Timpa. So my final comment would be, piggyback off what Kristen was saying. I recently did a TED Talk on exclusion is an invisible disease back in May, and making people feel valued and included leads to social responsibility at its best. We need to create an inclusive workforce, and when employees receive training that they need, they feel included. And also back to what I think Anne was saying, and Kristen, about developing more workplace ESL teachers. I get calls probably like once every other week about someone who wants to, like an ESL teacher who wants to do workplace ESL, and I'm in the middle of developing like a certification for that. So I should have it ready by April. But I think there's, I'm really dedicated to helping people understand how to go into the workplace and, and just help it become more inclusive and more socially responsible. It's just a passion, and I think everybody did a fantastic job, and we all have different skill sets, so we all came from different angles, and I think there was no like repeating of information. It's just all of us together, wow, we're so smart when you put us all in the same, room, or at least the same phone line. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And let's see, I just have a short time here to close this. One thing, I really wish I'd been talking about all of these things myself, but one thing that really came to mind as I was listening to everyone was about how do you bridge the gap or how do you raise someone from a very low social status to a very high social status? And what kept popping into my mind was leadership development, leadership development. And as I was listening to all of these programs and all of this education, I kept on thinking of that one person I was thinking of at the beginning of this discussion, and how he had benefited from education and been able to raise his social status. So I'm really hoping, that as we're doing our work out in the field, we'll be focusing on, changing these people into leaders. And I love the focus on connecting people, as you guys have all brought up. So thank you very much. I'd like to thank TESOL International Association for recording this for us today. I'd like to thank Andy from IATEFL for representing the IATEFL ESP Special Interest Group, and for everyone else for representing TESOL and for joining in on this. And if you're listening to this for the first time, be sure to check out the TESOL blog and to look at the ESP project leader profiles, because many of the speakers here have their own profiles there. So thank you very much for joining us, and good night.